Welcome back to the Mobile Fun YouTube channel, where we bring you the latest and greatest accessories for your devices. Today, we're doing something a little bit different to the usual content. We are doing a camera comparison of the iPhone 13 Pro Max and Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra. I'll start by mentioning we are mainly going to just look at the rear camera performance and just with photos rather than videos. Right, let's start things off by talking about the camera systems on each phone. The iPhone 13 Pro and Pro Max have an ultra wide camera with 1.8 aperture, a wide camera with 1.5 aperture, and finally a telephoto camera with a 2.8 aperture, which is actually a 3x zoom. All these cameras are 12 megapixels. The Samsung has some pretty big numbers here. An ultra wide camera at 12 megapixels with a 2.2 aperture, a wide camera with a massive 108 megapixels and 1.8 aperture, and two telephoto cameras, both at 10 megapixels, one at 3x zoom and the last at 10x zoom, both optically. I think on paper it seems Samsung has a massive lead, but photos come down to more than just megapixels. Let's start off with the ultra-wide cameras. The ultra-wide cameras have a very similar field of view. However, from my experience shooting side by side, it seems Samsung has a slight edge over the iPhone. The photos from the iPhone are not bad, and I think the colours are definitely more accurate. But the ones on Samsung seem to handle the dynamic range a little better. As you can see in this image under the bridge, you can see more details in the shadows and the sky, meaning the dynamic range seems to be better on the Samsung. While on the iPhone shot, you can't actually see the top of the pylon. However, the colours were definitely more real life on the iPhone, while the Samsung had a blue, cooler hue over the whole image. In this shot, a little further down the road, I used the vivid profile on the iPhone. You can see this had a very nice effect on the sky in the top right. However, Samsung still has a better dynamic range, as you can see the sky a lot more behind the trees. But again, there's a weird purple hue and warmer temperature throughout the photo, which definitely wasn't there in real life. Next, we'll move on to the main camera, which is going to be the one used most. Although Samsung has much more megapixels, I would say this is a draw. They are both pretty sharp. Occasionally, the Samsung handles shadows better with a bit more detail, but then the iPhone seems to be a lot more consistent. This photo, again taken by the bridge, but this time facing under the bridge, you again see the higher dynamic range of the S21 Ultra with bits of sky coming through the sides. But this time the Samsung is warmer in colour, which again is inconsistent. The iPhone exposes the image perfectly and has a very similar colour to the ultra wide, and therefore again being more consistent. Moving on to the optical zoom cameras. The 3x zoom is no competition in my eyes. The iPhone takes a much better image. As you can see in this shot through the bridge, the sign on the iPhone photo is much clearer than the photo from Samsung. However, because of the extra lens on Samsung, it means that when you zoom very far away, the iPhone is unable to keep up. In this 10x zoom image, the iPhone is doing a lot of sharpening in post to try and make it look sharp as it's digitally zooming in. However, because the Samsung is using an optical zoom, it doesn't need to do that. Therefore, the photo looks a lot clearer and more natural. However, I will add that I very rarely zoom that far. When I do zoom, I probably go to roughly around 5x, and this is where the iPhone is better, as a 3x lens is much better than the Samsung's in my opinion. Because of this, I would say it's a draw between them both, but an edge to the Samsung if you need to zoom very far. Moving on to something that's just been added to the iPhone this year, macro mode. Macro photography is where you get really close to objects. This allows you to really see fine details in the image. Straight away, the iPhone is ahead, as the minimum focus distance is 2 centimeters, whereas on the Samsung it is 3 centimeters. Both are really impressive. As you can see, you can get very close to things. However, overall I think this Samsung is just a little bit sharper. Although it does seem to be digitally sharpened. This baby conker that we found was interesting as it had spikes coming off it. It made it a challenge for the phones to get an accurate focus, and you can see here that the iPhone is a little bit weaker. Again, Samsung is moving the colour temperature to warmer, and in my eyes it just doesn't work very well. As you can see on this macro photo of bark on a tree, both are very sharp in the centre, but moving to the edges it begins to get a little bit blurry. However, the detail you can see is still very impressive. The iPhone is still going for a more natural look, which I definitely prefer, whereas Samsung is warmer and has lifted the shadows quite a bit, which removes a lot of the contrast from the photo. Now, for the next round of shots, I stood under a pylon and shot straight up. I then switched between all lenses to see how consistent they are, and to see what extra range you get on the Samsung. On the iPhone, I was impressed as all three photos are very similar in terms of colour and dynamic range. In this situation, the Samsung did actually have similar colours throughout. You can see on the 3x and 10x that the shadows have been lifted, and you can see a lot more detail on the pylon. It looks great in this photo, but it also does the same with faces and can sometimes look a little washed out. So to conclude, I think both these cameras are amazing, especially that they just fit in your pocket. The iPhone 13 is very consistent in terms of images it produces. The cameras have a good dynamic range, and if you want to edit them, there are definitely details in the shadows and the dynamic range is definitely there, so fantastic. But the look straight of the camera is a little bit more flat and more realistic to the eye, so you would most likely have to edit the photos after. Samsung have come a long way with their cameras. These are great, the hardware is top notch. However, the colours seem to shift depending on the lens and situation. There is also a lot of digital sharpening and bringing up shadows. It gives a sort of already edited look straight away. I would be happy with either of these. However, the iPhone would be the pick for me, as it is the best all-rounder and I prefer to edit my photos myself. I hope this helps you choose between these phones' cameras. Please subscribe for more videos from Mobile Fun. Share with anyone you know that loves phone photography. Comment below your thoughts on a favourite. And finally, to buy any phone accessories, check out the links in the description.